Good morning, everybody. It is a crappy day here in New England. It's snowing, it's sleeting. It's a great day to be inside. Let's go work on that Jeep. All right, so I've got the radiator pulled. It came out easy enough. That exposes the entire front of the Jeep, and now I can get easy access to the fan, the pulleys, and the alternator. So I'm going to pull that fan next and then get in and remove the alternator and the water pump and then prep the surface on the front of the block to install that new water pump. All right, so I put a 2x6 down to catch one of the blades of the fan. That way it won't spin while I loosen up the bolts. The bolts are 7/16, and fortunately they're not tight or overly tight, so I'm not having any real issues getting them off. They are a little bit rusty, so I think when I put them back on, I'm definitely going to put some Never Sees. All right, there we go. All right, so the next thing I have to do is pull that alternator. Now, this was a 6-volt system. Whoever restored the Jeep converted it to a 12-volt system, and it's pretty much jerry-rigged. So there's a lot of things I'm probably going to have to do when I put that alternator back in to get it to work properly with the new pulleys and the new water pump. So the first thing I have to do is unwire it. There are a bunch of wires. All right, so this is a little bit where the jerry-rigging comes in. So I've got 3 bolts that I have to remove. One is this support bracket, and this support bracket is attached to the water pump. And it's interesting, they put a long bolt in, and there's a bolt, and then there's another nut behind it that tightens up the water pump. That's a 1/2 inch, and that's actually loosening up the bolt, or loosening up the nut that holds the water pump in place. All right, that alternator is loose. All right, and then the last thing I need to do is pull that water pump, and there's only 2 bolts left to pull on that one. And again, they're both 1/2 inch bolts. Going back and using my favorite tool, that ratcheting box end wrench. All right, this one does not have a lot of room to work. Nope, there is one more bolt, and it's right here in the front on the horn. I don't know how much fluid I'm going to get out of here, so I'm going to go put a pan under here just in case. I need to get a hammer. Said I'm not going to use this water pump again. I'm not going to be overly gentle with it. I just want to tap it to get it to let loose. Yep, I'm glad I put that pan under there. So the next thing I have to do is scrape that gasket off and clean that surface, that mating surface up for the new water pump. So this isn't going to turn out as easy as I'd hoped it would be, but then why does it ever? A good friend of mine, Jeff Ford, has this saying that goes, well, why are you there? And while I'm here, I've discovered some other issues that I need to look at. I'd already planned to replace the motor mounts, and while I've got this alternator out and all this other stuff, I got easy access to the rubber mount, and I'm going to do that while I can get in without having to work my butt off. The other thing I discovered is that one of the ground straps, it's all torn up. It's seen better days, so I'm going to try to source a new ground strap, and I have to do that at the same time before I put the alternator back in. So I'm going to roll this thing back into the corner and get these parts on order. But before we go, I want to show you that alternator and show you the pulleys And the problem I've got trying to match all the pulley sizes for the water pump, the crank, and the alternator. The alternator pulley is not right. Now, one of the problems I'm facing is the size of the pulleys of the shivs. Now, the pulley on the water pump, it's a 5/8 pulley. If we go down and measure the pulley on the end of the crank, it's also 5/8. So what it's telling me is if the pulley on the crank and the pulley on the water pump is 5/8, then the whole system was designed to be 5/8. The alternator, though, is not. The alternator is only a 3/8 pulley, which means in order to get a V-belt that fits all three pulleys, the alternator itself has got to be sized up to 5/8. Now, another problem is that the alternator, this is a huge alternator, and there's all kinds of interferences on the motor where I can't get it to adjust properly. So if I could source a smaller alternator, it would make it a lot easier fitting all that into that small space that I'm trying to work with. So that's the next thing I have to do. I need to either find a smaller alternator or a larger pulley that I can put onto this alternator. And until I do all of that, I'm sort of dead in the water. I can't go much further. So the three things I need to do is to source and replace that ground strap, replace the motor mount, and deal with this alternator. So again, whoever restored this Jeep, they sort of jerry-rigged all these pulleys, and in order for me to get this pulley to line up with the correct position, I'm going to have to build some brackets for that as well. So that's our show. That's our episode for this time. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.